It's Lisa Copeland. I'm the founder of Cars Her Way, and this is Cars Her Way Radio. And I am so honored and excited to have a very good friend of mine on the show today. She is a automotive dealer, CEO, dealer principal of Meyers Automotive Group in Virginia. Liza Borches, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on, Lisa.
Well, there was urgency on getting you on this show. And the urgency is you ran the New York Marathon this weekend. And so today's date is November 4th.
Yeah.
And so the marathon was November 3rd, 2019.
Right.
And it looked like your entire team. So I want you to take us through the process. I mean, not only are you a car dealer, you run 15 stores, you're active every single day. I want you to take us through your journey on the New York Marathon. Like how many people do that? That's such a bucket list. So take us on that journey.
Well, I will say there are a lot of people out there that run marathons, and having just finished this one yesterday, I have so much respect for the people that do this every year, all the time, because I kind of feel like I hit my goal. I'm excited I did it, and I don't have another one on the calendar. I can tell you that.
Was there any point during the marathon that you thought that you weren't going to finish? Now, the New York Marathon is, am I correct? Is it 26 miles?
Yes, 26.2. And I will tell you that I had a training partner, a friend who I ran with yesterday. And I'm really glad that I was still running with him at about mile 18 when my legs started screaming at me. And he's a dear friend. And it was crazy. We both kind of crashed at the same moment. Both of our legs were kind of giving out. And I think we had each other to keep pushing ourselves along. There'd be, a half a mile where I was a little bit stronger, it could help push him. And then the next mile, he would push me a little bit. And I never thought I wouldn't finish, because I think I knew I was mentally strong enough to, push through anything. But my legs were saying, you're not going to finish. My head was saying, you're freaking going to finish.
Yeah. And so what was that deciding factor? Like, did you wake up one morning and you said, I don't know, running 15 car dealerships is not enough for me. Managing an empire is not enough. I think I'm going to run the New York Marathon. Tell us that story.
It happened last December. It was just before Christmas. It was in between, Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I've always been a very good at routine exercise. Every morning, 5 to 7 in the morning, I am up, I'm exercising, I'm starting my day. But I just kind of got into a rut with my routine, and I felt like I needed a health goal for 2019. I had a lot of business goals. I had some family goals, but I wanted a personal health goal. And so although I was already running a lot, I decided one day out of the blue, I said, you know what, I'm going to run a marathon. And I don't know where the idea came from, but I said it out loud. Once I said it out loud to one person, I was like, okay, it's real now. I'm doing it. Put my name into the lottery for New York City Marathon. And I think it says 18% of the people get in through the lottery. And I got in. And once I actually got into the lottery, I said, well, now there's absolutely no turning back. I had written down the goal. I said it out loud, and I got in through the lottery. And so it was time to do it. I'll tell you, the biggest reason that I thought marathon versus some other health goal was, for me, running time is thinking time.
Okay.
And I felt that 2019, we had a lot going on in our company. And I needed time to be thinking strategically and not just time for fighting fires. And for me, running time really gives me that. So that was important to me this year.
So how many hours a day do you have to run to prepare for this marathon? Like, how did you tell us about the training for this marathon? This is a big deal, because not only did you get in, but you finished. And I know that there's a very large percentage of people that don't finish. Am I right about that?
I have no idea. I know that at the end, as I was slowing down, I saw a lot of people walking.
Yeah.
That made me feel a little bit better that at least I was still running. I don't know exactly what the statistics are on how many people finish, but for me, it was tough. But the training, I really started training in earnest in July, and I met with a coach here in Charlottesville, wonderful man, Mark Lorenzoni, who owns the local running shop, and he mapped out a plan for me. We sat together and we said, okay, on July 15th through Marathon Day, here's what I'm going to run every single day. And I stuck to the plan. I mean, whether it was cold, hot, raining, I was on vacation. I was in Sweden at one point. I was in Detroit. I followed the plan. And I think that was what gave me confidence on Marathon Day to say, no matter what, I know I can finish this. I've run 22 miles. I've done every bit of training I needed to do. And so I think having a plan for anything in life is the most important part.
So I actually told your story in my book, Car Buying Her Way, The Fierce Girl's Roadmap to the Car of Your Dreams, because when I met you, I was so inspired by you. You know, there's less than 10% female dealer principals in this country. When it comes to, and that's 15, less than 10%, and that would be a single rooftop. You've got 15 rooftops. Now, are you the third or you're the fourth generation?
Fourth generation.
You're the fourth generation. And, you know, your company's been in business for 95 years, founded in 1924. But there was a very special woman that you wrote about in the book and that we wrote about, and that was your Aunt Elizabeth Meyers. And she was the majority owner in the 20 and 30s. Right. And it's a good story. And I know the story because I wrote the story, but I want you to tell the story. It's a little more colorful.
I wish that I was obviously there in person back then to have met I guess she was my great aunt. But I actually ended up being her namesake. I was Elizabeth Meyers before I got married. Now I'm Elizabeth Borches. I go by Liza. And my great aunt back in the late 20s, the story goes like this. She was in her early 20s herself. She moved to New York City as a single woman in her 20s and joined Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance. From what I have heard from my ancestors, she could knock on any executive's door in New York City and be able to get a meeting with them. She had an incredible reputation for integrity, honesty, and being able to help, I think, move lives forward and help people with solutions to what they needed in life. And so she was incredibly successful financially. She was the only one in our family who had enough cash and savings during the Depression to be able to invest in our company and keep it alive during the Depression. She owned 75% of Carter Meyers Automotive through the Depression, and all the way up until my father was still buying stock back from her and her estate, I think into like the 80s and even early 90s. So her legacy, she never worked day to day in our company, but she believed in our family and she believed in the mission of our company and invested all of her savings during the Depression to help keep it alive.
And there's a very interesting story behind that because she was the majority owner in the 20s and the 30s. And there was a gentleman by the name of Henry Ford who would not allow her to be the owner of record.
So I don't know if everybody knows this, but as wonderful as
now,
as wonderful as Henry Ford was to our industry and everything that he innovated, he didn't have respect for women in the workplace, from what I understand. Even the secretaries at Ford back in the day were all men. And so anyone who's in automotive today knows that you have to have packages and ownership submitted to every manufacturer and approved. Well, our family never sent the information on my great aunt owning the company up to Ford. I think the owner of record stayed as my great grandfather all through that time because Henry Ford would not have approved a female auto dealer back in the 20s and 30s.
Liza, I just got chills. Like when you said that, I just seriously, I've got like chills in my, being a former automotive principal myself. And of course you being one, it's like, man, like she had the money, she had the brain, she had anyways, but great story, amazing legacy. I believe that you and I will meet Aunt Elizabeth someday, right on the other side. She sounded like an amazing woman, but knowing you and hearing her story, which I love her story. I wish I would have known her. You have that same tenacity. Just the fact, ever since I've met you, like you set a goal and you see it through and you get it done. And then you move to the next goal. Besides Aunt Elizabeth, what in growing up and in your life gave you that tenacity, gave you that I'm not going to quit? Because your story in itself is very interesting. You were a single point Volvo dealer. And so I'd like you to tell everybody that story because it's a good story.
Yeah, well, I'll give a 2 seconds before I got to Volvo. After I graduated from college, I actually went to work on the manufacturer side. So I went to work for Honda in their corporate headquarters out in Torrance, California. Learned our business from the other side of the table, which I think gave me a unique ability to create relationships with our manufacturers, having sat in their seat. But what really drew me to the retail side, and my husband jokes about this, that when we met and I was working for Honda, I said I was never going to move back to Virginia and work in the family dealership. Now I was 21 years old when I said this.
Never. 21.
Right. I said, I'm not getting married. I'm never going to have children. I was all about my career. But there becomes a time, and it wasn't that much later in life, where Honda had moved me around several times. And I realized the value in being able to put down roots in a community and be able to connect with a team versus going into different dealerships every day, moving to a new market every 2 years. And so this small Volvo dealership came for sale in Charlottesville. And I didn't want to just come back and work for my dad and be the dealer's daughter. I had seen that story play out a lot of times. And I knew that it wasn't the way I wanted to enter our company. So my dad said, you know what, Liza, there's this guy who's looking to retire in Charlottesville. He has a small Volvo dealership if you have interest. I didn't know exactly what I was doing on the retail side, but it was a very small store that I could get my arms around. And so I bought into this dealership, and we had 14 employees when I first got there. It was very small. But the benefit of that was I got to be everything from the shuttle driver to a service advisor to the service manager to the salesperson to the finance manager to the dealer principal. And I had to do it all.
All in one day.
Yeah. Yes.
Just depending on, like, I'm sure you showed up first thing in the morning and there was service customers waiting for you to take them to work, right? And drop them off.
Absolutely. And it was the best way to learn.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's where I started on the retail side.
Now, did you ever sell cars?
Did I what?
Did you sell cars on your showroom floor?
Absolutely. In fact, I sold every car for the first 3 years. I had 2 salespeople at the time when I bought the store, and it was the previous dealer's son and nephew. They both resigned on the 90th day when their guarantee ran out. So it was just me. I called my husband and asked if he'd come in and help me on a Saturday, answer phone calls because I was going to be there by myself. And
literally by yourself.
By myself, because it was I had 2 salespeople and they both quit.
Oh my gosh.
So I hired one other guy, and for the next couple of years, it was me, my husband, and Fred Willard, who's actually still with our dealership today. And I can tell you the month that we didn't sell a ton of cars, but the one month that we sold 45 cars, it was just the 3 of us. I had a 1-year-old, Taylor wasn't even 1 because he was still in the baby Bjorn, so he wasn't walking yet. I had my son on the front of me in the baby Bjorn, and I was running around the dealership, running out on the lot, excuse me, 1 second. I need you to get right now. My daughter's walking by.
Hi, daughter.
She's trying to get our dog who's ran in. But I sold more cars that month with a baby on the front of me than we did any other month so far in the history of that store. And we just did what we had to do. And so that included having my child in there with me. And I had a nursery set up in my office. And it worked. So I sold a lot of cars. I was the salesperson, the used car manager, the sales manager, the F&I manager, and the GM all at one time at that point.
Now, speaking of that daughter of yours, do you see her following you into the business?
You know, I don't know what our business is going to look like 20 years from now, or maybe 15 years from now when she's going to be deciding where her career path is going to go. I would love to encourage her to do whatever she ends up being interested in. Both of my kids know our dealership. My older child, my son, who's 14, has worked at our dealership quite a few times in the summers and on breaks. Loves it. He's willing to do anything. He has learned to answer phones, take pictures of used vehicles, do landscaping, clean. He's stocked in parts when we were moving dealerships. But I just don't know exactly what our industry is going to look like. So I'm going to encourage them to do what they love. I'm going to expose them to our industry, and we'll see where we are when it comes time for them to make a decision in life. Now,
you recently replaced that building. You recently built a new dealership for that first store. So what did that feel like? Because I watched it happen on Facebook, and I saw some of your original customers come in, and that had to be pretty bittersweet for you.
It was a very emotional transition, but it was absolutely the right time. We are now in this beautiful small boutique facility for our Volvo dealership. Our employees weren't sure about the move, and nobody likes change.
Right.
Our customers weren't sure about us moving, but it is such a better environment for our associates. I'm watching our technicians now work with state-of-the-art technology, watching with state-of-the-art equipment. They're finally in an air conditioning and shop, which we didn't have in this particular store.
Nice. That right there is a reason enough to move, right?
As much as I love it for our customers, I actually love the new facility more for our employees. Giving them a good workspace is really important to me.
So why don't we talk about your employees a little bit? So you've got 15 stores. How many wonderful souls do you employ?
We have about 675 associates across Virginia.
Wow. And so you've got 675 associates, and excuse me, your associates own 26% of your company. Talk to us about that.
So back in 1979, we had always had profit sharing. Actually, since 1941, we had profit sharing in our company. In 1979, we turned that profit sharing into an employee stock ownership plan. And our thought was that instead of sharing the profits with our employees and having it invested in other companies that we couldn't control the outcome, why don't we invest it back in ourselves, which would help fund future growth for CMA, and also give our employees stake in the sweat equity that they were putting in every day. the harder that they worked, the more we worked together, the better the results we had. Not only would they get a piece of the profits, but our stock price would increase more based on the hard work and effort that they put in. So we really saw it as a win-win to help them save for retirement and also help it grow. With the harder they worked and the better we worked together, the more it would financially help them in their long-term future.
Wow. And that's, and that is really, really a big vision. So, there's a lot of people on right now that are, that are dealers, that are general managers, all kinds of people. So from a recruiting and retention standpoint, talk to us about, is it really a great recruiting tool? Is it a great retention tool? I mean, everybody in the industry is struggling right now.
Right. Well, I would say that it certainly is a super unique thing about our company that we are able to talk about when we're interviewing prospects. I think we can do a better job of sharing that story so that people fully understand it when they're looking at potentially joining us. But it definitely opens the doors for us to some higher level executives and managers that are considering lots of different dealer groups.
Yeah.
We show them what that path looks like to ownership in our company. After 1 year, every associate in our company becomes an owner. Obviously, the longer they stay with us, the more their stock grows. So I think I would say in the first 5 years that someone's with us, it's not such a large number that it's keeping them from leaving. We've got to make sure in that first 5 years that we're engaging them in lots of different ways. They've got to believe in our vision. They've got to enjoy and be a part of the culture of our store. And after 5 years, they start seeing their ownership grow. And when you hit 10 years, it's a pretty significant chunk of money. And what we hope is that anybody that would have that much money invested in one stock would not only watch it every day, but do everything that they could do to help it grow. So I don't think day one that people get enough ownership that it changes their behavior, but I hope in that first 5 years, we get them engaged strongly enough that when they get enough stock at 5 years, they now want to stay with us forever.
So I'm going to ask a question you may or may not want to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What is the downfall of that? What is the downfall to an owner to have an ESOP? Or is there? May not be.
Call this a downfall, but the two things that we have that are different that we have to deal with. I think when my dad first started the ESOP, he thought, you know what, this is going to take pressure off of the ownership. This is going to engage everybody in the company to work harder, and maybe we can sit back a little and don't have to work as hard. I think it puts more pressure on the top leaders in the company than not having an ESOP, because we have to come out each year and report the results to our staff, to all of our associates. If that stock doesn't go up, we are affecting their future retirement.
Oh, I like it.
From the top, strategic decisions about where and how we're going to grow, how we're going to spend our money, how we're watching expenses. Every decision we're making is not just affecting us, but it's directly affecting 675 families. So I think it's put more pressure on us. The other thing that it creates is significant transparency. When we bring in a new hire, they get a copy of our company financial statement in the new hire orientation. Wow. They can look by dealership how much money it's making, how much we're growing or not growing. And there is absolutely nothing hidden. So there's no golf clubs being charged to the parts department. There are no demos that are fancy that the owners can go drive a Ferrari and put it on our financial statement. I mean, that just doesn't exist.
You're actually paying for your private corporate jet.
So we have that set up in an LLC. We don't have a jet.
I was about your jet.
It's really good. We don't have a jet. So
I know, you've got a plane though.
4-seater Cirrus airplane.
Yes.
People call it Air Versa. And we have it set up 50% owned by our company, 50% by my dad. And we have to document every hour that plane is used and for what, and charged off appropriately in the company. So it's a great question because our associates know everything. They can dig into everything in our financials.
But see, I think that's why your associates love you so much. You know what? I loved seeing yesterday, again, watching your journey on Facebook. For those of you that are just tuning in, I've got Liza Borches. She's the CEO, dealer principal of Carter Meyers Automotive Group in Virginia. She's got 15 stores. And I wanted to bring her on today because I wanted to talk about the fact that she ran the New York City Marathon yesterday, 26.2 miles, and she finished. She's a good friend of mine. I wrote about her in our book, or in my book, Car Buying Her Way. So I'm pretty into her story, but I love the story. She's a 4th generation car dealer, but she really went out on her own and started her own path by buying her first store, and then ended up eventually buying the majority from her family. Am I right to say that? And her company is set up as an ESOP. So, her employees own 26% of the company. And if you're just tuning in, what we're talking about is just the transparency of how she runs her organization. And those of you in the automotive industry know that is rare is not even the word. If it was a steak, it would be, the cow would still be alive on the plate, because that doesn't happen. That level of transparency. And so as I was watching Liza yesterday, and I was watching everybody, cheer you on, and all the Facebook posts. And then I think it was either Saturday or Friday, your employees threw a big party for you. You can just see the love and admiration that they have for you. But I know as an owner and as a leader that also has got to keep you up at night, because you know that you owe those 675 employees your best every single day.
Right.
So when you agreed to do the interview today, and thank you very much, because again, I just did not want to get too much time out after the marathon, because I wanted you to still talk about how hard it is and remember it in your head.
Yes.
I said, well, I said, did you go to work today? You're like, I was at work at 8:15.
That didn't cross my mind not to be.
Yeah, I mean, so you flew, you ran the marathon, you flew home last night from New York, back to Virginia, and back in the office at 8:15 this morning.
Yeah, I did. I was excited to see everybody. You mentioned that my associates threw a little surprise for me on, I think it was Thursday. And I really had tried to downplay this marathon. I did not want it to affect my time at work. I didn't want it to affect time with my family. I was really committed to just keeping it separate and not taking away from anything. And so I hadn't talked to my associates a lot about it. And on Thursday, they surprised me. My assistant said, I need to talk to you in the conference room. I could tell something was up. And I opened the door, and there sat like our whole management company team. And my parents were in there. And then I was like, wait, did I do something wrong? I felt like I was back in middle school with my parents, that maybe something was wrong.
Oh.
They pulled out a CMA hat for me to wear for the marathon. And they gave me this huge mat with the marathon logo in the middle with every one of our associates. I'm sure a few were missed, but it looked like 600 some signatures with good luck comments and support comments all over it. And it meant the world to me. I was so shocked. I was almost in tears, and it was really, really special.
Yeah, it is special, but you're the kind of leader that people want to follow. So I asked you earlier, but I didn't ask you, but I said, I just made the assumption. What is it, Liza, that keeps you up at night? Whether it's personally or professionally, what is it that keeps you up at night?
I think you touched on it earlier about the 675 families that I know count on the future of our company. I truly care deeply about everybody in our company, not just what's happening to them today, but what their future is going to look like. Making good decisions on making sure that our company is going to be a player for a long time in this industry, that it will go on and live on beyond me, beyond my family, and making sure that we can provide for 675 and hopefully a lot more families in the future. Keeps me up at night. I want to make sure I'm making the best decisions possible, that I'm taking all of the information into account for where and how we should grow or not at the appropriate times. Our industry is evolving and changing every single day. And I've got to make sure that we are right on top of it. I don't know that we have to be the leader in every single area. Sometimes it's good to learn from the mistakes of others.
Absolutely.
Constantly studying and understanding when and how we've got to change and not just keep up, but be ahead of the competition.
So I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball. Mm-hmm. We live in an omni-channel world, in the fact that when it comes to marketing, we've got traditional media, digital media, social media, all of this. If you only had one way, if I came to you and I said, Liza, you have to pick one thing, the one thing, what would you do to market for your dealerships?
I think that we would go all social. If we only could choose one thing, I think the return on the investment of what you can do on social media is incredible. Now, I don't believe that we do a good enough job right now that I would feel comfortable saying turn off everything else. But if I had to choose one avenue, one thing, and we're going to know how to do it absolutely perfectly well and spend our money strategically, I think that in today's world, we could do it on social media.
Yeah, and you and I've seen dealers around the country do that and been very, very successful at it. I can speak to women consumers. Of course, that's where my expertise is. And 8.5 hours a day women spend on social media. So why, as dealers, why would we not be where the women are all day long? I know you know this stat because you're sit on the advisory board of Cars Her Way, but 54% of vehicles that were sold in 2018 were registered to women. So I like to use that caveat, but they were registered to women. But women influenced 85% of them. So why would we as dealers not be where the customers are, where the influencer is? She's on social. So I'm going to say, Liza, you passed that test because other dealers from around the country that I interview for the show, a lot of times, their word is, oh, we got to stay with digital and we've got to do this. And I'm always thinking, no, if it was me all over again and I had no budget, we would own the social media channels. Mm-hmm. So, I definitely think your thought process is right, moving forward. What do you see as the biggest threat to the automotive industry in the next 10 years?
I think that there are a lot of potential threats, but the two that I'm paying attention to the most are first, making sure that as the technology changes in vehicles and as we have new manufacturers potentially entering the United States, mm-hmm. I want to make sure that I understand and am partnered with manufacturers who believe in the value of the dealer and understand the service that we provide to customers that is unique. I'm trying to understand why the consumer might want to buy direct and make sure that we are providing whatever that need is or that service of why a consumer would want to go around a dealer, and make sure that we would never fall into that space. So I think that's really important to understand is how the consumers want to buy, making sure that there's no benefit to them buying direct and that dealers are creating a significant value to the equation of buying and servicing vehicles.
If you were a consumer today and you were to put on your consumer hat, what would be the one reason that would drive you to buy direct? No, take CMA out of the equation. Just general what you know about the industry, which is a lot.
Time and simplification. I mm-hmm. want my purchase to be extremely efficient. I want it to be quick, especially if I know what I want, and I want it to be simple. And so I believe that consumers think that a direct purchase could eliminate some steps, simplify the process, have it be more timely and transparent. And so we just, as dealers, need to make sure, and I do believe actually most dealers can provide that purchase experience and that service experience, but there's a perception out there that we don't.
I saw something really interesting. I was in Detroit a couple of weeks ago, and I went to go visit our good friend, Ali Rita, who is the #1 car salesman in the world. He holds the Guinness Book of World. I shouldn't say he holds the Guinness Book because Guinness decided to jump out of that dogfight, but he did break the record of 44 years from Joe Girard. I saw a car, Liza, delivered from I got dropped off at the dealership. I went in to see him. We're taking pictures. The gentleman walked in literally right behind me. He walked in, out, bought a car, delivered in 25 minutes. I saw it with my very eyes. And I thought, oh my gosh, if this would be our industry norm. And we were laughing, Ali and I said, because he didn't even buy it on his lunch break. He bought it on his coffee break. We
all need to learn from that. I want to see that. I need to understand how that happened and make sure that our stores are capable of doing that.
I will tell you the one thing that my takeaway from it was, to go speak to my dealers about is that they have cars ready. He knows what his customers are looking for, and he helps his customers. He's really good at landing his customers on the car that they should buy. And I was literally standing in the office and, Ollie's introducing me to this gentleman. And the gentleman said, well, I think I want a 36-month lease. And Ollie said, no, you need to do 24. He said, okay. And Ollie said, and I think that you need a black car. And the gentleman said, okay.
Well, that's just the reason he can do it so fast. And they trust him. He can take control because they have full trust in him.
They do.
It's a big deal. We need to have that across our industry.
Yeah. And he was also doing the best thing for his customer. Detroit's a very heavy lease market, and his customer is better off in a 24-month lease. It's better for the dealership and it's better for the customer, right? To be able to cycle these. And that's one of the reasons, we started Cars Her Way Radio, was to be able to bring on the best and brightest and share best practices. I've got the, luxury honor, whatever it is, to know the coolest people in the country. This weekend, I was with the president of Aston Martin. She invited me to be her guest.
Oh, that's awesome.
I can't even tell you. First of all, she's us. You would absolutely love this woman. She's just absolutely amazing. And she's just cool, but she understands, that buyer's journey. And I think that as dealers, we have to understand that buyer's journey. It's not about us. And I'm going to have Carrie Wise from TrueCar on the show in the next few days. And we have a big takeaway, the dealers that are watching. And I learned this from Carrie, and we have put it into all of the marketing strategies we're doing, is people don't care that you're number one. They don't care you've got the biggest inventory. They don't care that you're family owned. They don't care. You need to lead with your reputation. So if you're a 5-star on Google or 4.7 on Google, you lead with that. You lead in your marketing and your advertising about what it is you do for the customer. See, everyone's got large inventories right now, right?
Yes.
I mean, dealers are sinking in inventory because it's been a little slower. Customers really may not want to deal with the number one dealership because they kind of feel like, there's something, maybe they're heavy negotiators, whatever it may be. And so you lead with that value prop that unique selling prop that benefits the customer, which is, I'm working with a dealership that prides themselves on the customer experience.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just, there's so much out there, but Liza, you and I both see it all day, every day, that dealerships around the country are still, on television doing this. We're number one. We're the greatest.
They don't care.
Customers don't care.
No.
I mean, you may as well take your $100 bills or your $1,000 bills and burn them.
Yes. Yeah.
So so if you were to be giving advice to every dealer in the country that's going to be listening to this, and they will be, what would you tell them about the customer journey? Where would you tell them to start? The most important thing in the customer, and I'm asking you that because I believe you're an expert in that.
Well, I think it goes back to the word that we just used about Ali is trust.
Yes.
You have to figure out how to earn the trust of each and every customer, because that will change our entire process. If they trust us, we can simplify it, we can be more transparent, and we can absolutely move them through the process quicker. When we don't have trust, when we try to hide things, when we have hidden fees, when we advertise one price and do a bait and switch and put them on another vehicle, when we aren't looking out for the customer in a win-win situation and only looking for a win for the dealership, it does not work. And I use the example, and I'll talk about this with our team, for example, in the F&I department. When we ask really good questions and we understand, for example, that this consumer who just walked into our office, maybe they're buying a car and they live in a new neighborhood with a lot of brand new construction. And we find out that there's probably going to be nails all over this neighborhood for the next 6 months. And we think tire and wheel is a great product to sell them. Mm-hmm. And we find out that they have 2 teenage sons who've lost 2 sets of keys over the last year. And maybe key replacement would be a good product. If we ask really good questions and gain their trust and only sell them the products that are going to benefit them, that's how we make the whole consumer journey work. Too often we try to fit the consumer into our process and the products that we want to sell without really understanding how it's going to benefit them. And the word trust is everything. That's what we have to keep building. And it's not easy because our industry has taken a lot of beat downs along the way on ourselves as to why we haven't had that trust with the consumer.
So something just came to me about your organization, and, salespeople have to sell. And so many times I think salespeople get into selling commodity, either commodity based or whatever, is because they don't even believe in who they're working for. I mean, like set aside the product, right? Mm-hmm. They see their boss making sketchy decisions, or, they see what happens behind the scenes. But when they work for an organization like yours, and I'm not just trying to, I don't know that I've ever said this to a dealer before having the conversation, but when you said earlier in the show, when you talked about the fact that when they come to work for you, that they're shown the financial statements to every single store, because they will be owners after a year, and your employees do own 26% of your 15 stores, that transparency, that confidence, that trust that sales team has in the ownership, I have to believe that goes that is just all over them when they're working and they're negotiating the car deals with your customers. And so I really want to just, bring that to the forefront. We have so many people on this right now that I'm watching, but all of this is being uploaded to Cars Her Way Radio at iHeartRadio. And so we're not going to call them out during this particular broadcast. But what I'm going to say is that there's a confidence in that I would say 95% of the car sales professionals, and I like to call them professionals because they keep our country moving forward. Yeah. If the car sales professionals don't have So I think that they already start the negotiation. They walk out in front of the customer disadvantaged because they had just been in the sales tower and they just heard the sales manager doing something sketchy. And then they walk out and they're like, oh gosh, and now I've got to try to talk this customer into we're the best, believe in us.
Right.
And I think that you and your organization, you've laid as the leader an amazing foundation of trust with your employees in their organization. And so for those of you listening to this, I would start with building an organization that internally has trust, where the employees trust each other and the employees trust the leadership. And if you have leadership that you cannot trust, my advice, get rid of them. Period. And Liza, I'm telling you, I've never really been able to say that before. And I've talked to a lot of dealers that are very trustworthy, don't get me wrong, but just the fact that I don't know another dealer who lays out the financials on the day that you're hired. I mean, that usually doesn't.
Sometimes it can come back to bite us, and I won't try to pretend and say that we're perfect and we have this all figured out, but I do think that we do have a foundation of trust, and sharing that ownership is a big piece of it.
Well, as we wind up today, you were so gracious to agree to do this show. But again, you're such an amazing leader. You're so well thought of in both the industry and by your employees. What's the one piece of advice, that somebody who might be listening to this show, they're struggling and they're thinking, you know what, it isn't worth it. I hate my boss. I'm not making enough money. I really like the car business, but I'm going to throw in the towel. What is your piece of advice? Kind of as like, they like to call me Mama Bear, but like as Mama Bear, what advice would you give that person, no matter what position they're in, that's struggling?
And we have people in our company that struggle, and I'll see some at the end of a month and I can tell it on their face that they had a tough month. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing, and I was talking to one just the other day that I tell them, is that even if you didn't hit your goal this month, every person that you're working with in this industry, I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for understanding what an impact we're making on their lives. Every customer that we sell, every family that we meet, whether it be in our service department, in our sales department, transportation is a huge part of people's lives. They may not want to recognize it, but you need transportation to get where you want to go in life. And we are an industry that provides that. And we need to be proud of what we do. We need to understand whether we only sold 10 cars this month or whether we hit 50. We're going to keep pushing ourselves to do better because we have an important role in this country and in people's lives. So you make an impact every day. You need to be proud of what you do and realize that you're changing people's lives.
Right. And to your point, like I'll just go back to women consumers, the two things, and you and I talked about this a lot, and you're as passionate as I am about it, is the two things that keep women impoverished. It's okay, the puppy. We love dogs. Yeah. So the only thing that, two things that keep women impoverished is transportation and childcare. So I don't think as car dealers, we can do anything about the childcare, but I do know that we can provide honest transportation solutions to our customers out there. Liza, I want to thank you so much. Liza Borches, CEO, dealer principal of Carter Meyers Automotive Group, 15 stores in Virginia, an amazing lady. Tell us the company website for anybody out there who might just want to relocate to Virginia and work for an amazing company.
I appreciate that, Lisa. Our company website is cmacars.com.
Okay.
And Carter Meyers Automotive. I just moved out of my light. And I so appreciate you having me on. I believe that our industry is so important. We're going to have a lot of challenges ahead, and we need great people in this industry. We need to be able to change the customer journey. We need to be able to create trust. We need to understand how important transportation is. And there's going to be a lot of changes with future product, electrification, autonomous vehicles. The climate, everything's going on with climate change. Transportation is a big deal, part of that solution. So I encourage people who are considering getting an automotive. I encourage to make sure and do it. I encourage our customers to create relationships with us because we need you and we want to be here to support you.
Well, Liza, you are an innovator. You're an innovator. You're a disruptor. You're somebody I look up to and I admire very, very much. And thank you for everything that you do in our industry. And most importantly, thank you for being such an incredible role model for women in the automotive industry.
Lisa in this industry with us, Lisa.
We do. So this is Lisa Copeland, founder of Cars Her Way Radio. Thanks for tuning in today. Bye-bye.